Thank you ever so much. Here we are. You're going to see our names a lot now because we're slightly obsessed with ourselves potentially. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to talk to you about the project that we did, again, as with the previous presentations, using the Innovate sort of critical national infrastructure funding for digital twins. And so again, thank you to Simon, who's in the room, and back off being away for a little while. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to do a bit of a scene set for you on this one, and then sort of where we're trying to get to. And I'm definitely going to hand over to the subject matter experts here, who have sort of gone ahead and actually taken the rambling, disjointed thoughts in our minds and lack of insight and actually turned it into something really meaningful for what we're trying to do. What I am going to say right at the very beginning here, this is about the journey we've been on. We've only got 30 minutes to cram in a lot of content, so it looks a bit light, that's why. Our original aim here was to be able to use digital capabilities to tell a story to investors. That was the audience of here. So it's very much using the end game of having a digital twin, but actually using the journey itself to tell that story, if those of you who were upstairs earlier heard about, but actually bring it to life, what we're trying to do in an engaging way. And the other really, really critical thing, to just get out of the way straight away, we have not created a digital twin. It was never the intention. We created a prototype that will ultimately lead to a digital twin. So I'll just set that scene now for you. So the context that we've done this in is a location called Fawley Waterside, which is in the Solent Freeport. It used to be, it's a brownfield site. It used to be a coal-fired power station right on the edge of the Solent. And the ambition is to turn it into a new merchant city, which has residential down the bottom, the heart of the city at the top, and then there's a commercial area in the north end, and that's where we were being brought in to start helping them understand how we can bring together research, development, and then the commercialization of that. Okay, and the premise with this is that it's what Catapults do, it's who we are as an entity. We're here to co-locate industry, academia, ideas, thoughts, initiatives, and networking. And this is what we wanted this space to do. This is what we came up with. It's called an International Maritime Innovation Centre. Okay? And its focus is obviously overarching thematic, is maritime, taking advantage of location. But it's very much about bringing in sort of digital capabilities, energy efficiency, sustainability, the space element, hence partly why our Catapult was involved with it, and autonomy. It's mixed use. It's about collaboration spaces. It's about manufacturing. I was just talking to Jonathan in the break about all the capability he's doing would live in here as well. And it's also about bringing in multiple tenants. So you could have permanent tenancy here. You can bring in that whole skills piece and that sort of apprenticeship and align all those kind of activities. So that was the whole premise of what this is. And then what we wanted to do is, hang on, trying to get the clickers to work here. By going down this route of having a digital twin concept and prototype, it was trying to help people understand the difference between an Catapult-esque environment around that sort of collaboration ecosystem. So it's not just an office, it's not just another lab, it's a destination. The building is the outer shell, if you like, but it's actually the importance of what happens in it that's the critical element in here. The other things as well is about whole life, you know, and we want to extend that life. We don't want to create a white elephant that's lost sort of its momentum after 10 years because it hasn't kept up and it's not fit for purpose in the future. So there's a whole heap of options appraisals in there, decision making. If we take some assets out now, what does that look like and what do we replace it with and what's the consequences? But knowing that we need to do that. So what we were trying to do is think about the long-term capabilities for this facility, recognizing that we'd be long gone and there'll be other people coming in, and actually building up that really compelling stakeholder narrative that goes alongside that. So we did a really agile methodology here, which both David and Peter are going to elaborate on a bit more. But what we wanted to do, and what we have done through this, is create something that allows you to test and explore spaces, help engage and understand. I think most of us will appreciate if I describe something to you with no images. We'll each have our own individual interpretation of what that might be. I'll give you a 2D drawing. It'll help us along the way, but it won't give us everything. If we create something that's 3D and then it's immersive, we can then start having those conversations in that space. And again, this is why it's very much the concept and a prototype rather than an actual twin. And the other thing as well, it's that piece about failing fast and mitigating, making the wrong impact. It's probably done for the right intentions, but because of the way it's been approached, you end up with the wrong results. So I'm about to hand over. What I will say, it's been a really fast and agile project. I feel as though some of the colleagues from Jacobs probably haven't slept over the last couple of months. We've learnt a lot, and I think there's a lot more to come. I think we surprised ourselves along the way in this project. And the other thing I think to take away from the very beginning, yes, it's, we focus very much on Forley now, but what we have sort of understood along the way, one of the little eureka moments was what we have done, you could easily pivot and apply elsewhere. With that, I'm going to hand over to David.
Thanks, Emma. So just building on the logic that Emma's just described, we needed to spend some time thinking, how can we do things differently? So this was, how can we work with Emma and her team to really bring the IMIC vision to life, but also how can we demonstrate the value of digital twins as well? So value comes in many shapes and sizes, different perspectives. So we focused on these 8 key areas where we thought we could drive value. Firstly, we translated the IMIC vision into a digital twin vision set of goals and outcomes. This is fundamental to ensuring that the digital twin development, the activities were prioritised in line with the strategic goals and objectives, but most importantly, providing that coordination of purpose. So why are we building this twin? Why are we looking at these different functionalities, different capabilities? For number 2, very much centred around people driving the development of the twin throughout its asset lifecycle. And again, with reference to the Gemini principles, this is making sure that we help determine that clear purpose behind the twin. For number 3, we fast-tracked the architectural concept. That was inspired by a variety of contemporary buildings, stakeholder views about what the IMIC could and should look like, including drone footage as well, just to bring that site context into play. For item 4, we developed a composite digital twin prototype. This is a major output from the project, consisting of architectural, structural, mechanical models, and a variety of spaces to make the IMIC appear as lifelike as possible. And then for number 5, we developed a virtual meeting space and design room. So this provided the front door to the various platforms that made up our composite digital twin. And what we were aiming for there was that comprehensive digital twin experience that was showcasing what the prototype can do in line with the functionality requirements, but really sort of bringing out that immersive environment to stimulate discussions. For number 6, we produced a digital twin video, and this was showcasing essentially all of the work that we'd achieved so far along this journey. And for number 7, we developed an interactive digital twin roadmap, which showed increasing levels of digital twin maturity, but also the ability to focus on specific goals or a specific part of the journey. So trying to make that as interactive as possible. And then lastly, we undertook an initial costing exercise around all of the enablers throughout this journey, so developing the prototype, so that covered the costings for processes, organisational change, etc., and also included a technology options appraisal as well. So this slide, this sort of shows our approach to developing the twin roadmap. So we took an infrastructure asset management with enablers approach. On the right-hand side of the diagram, there's a valuable source of digital information management guidance, which we are able to plug directly into our approach. And on the left-hand side of this diagram, there's some really good infrastructure management guidance material from the IAM and REBA. But we had to look through this with a digital lens just to see what was related, through a digital lens, what's related to digital twins and the development of digital twins. as well as taking the very compelling Forley waterside vision and looking at that with a digital lens to help build our roadmap. But essentially our approach was reflecting that rich asset management environment and framework with a really rich digital environment for which to make asset management decisions around the IMIC. Pete.
Yes. So just to dig a bit deeper into the methodology, before we could begin building a model, turning this into a prototype digital twin, and also going about trying to develop a set of activities to develop a roadmap to go forwards into the asset lifecycle, we needed to agree what we wanted to, Catapult, Forley Waterside, and the various different clients and stakeholders wanted to achieve from this potential asset that is currently doesn't exist, needs to seek investments, needs to be designed and built, needs to then be handed over and then operated. And then while it's being operated, needs to be an agile space that is able to be changed and modified going forwards as a dynamic structure. So we look to try to define what are the functions we wanted of the digital twin as it goes through the life cycle. And we're using that phrase in the case of we're starting now at potentially like a concept phase, pre-investment, all the way to operational and maintenance, where what are those pinning down what the functions are, to then build up the activities that need to be delivered, doing those activities, and then bringing that functionality, bringing that capability online through the life cycle. So we agreed on a set of 5 goals that those that know their asset life cycle will see they go from left to right, with the first priority one being that securing investment and securing potential tenants. And that's the biggest focus of this project. But also having an eye on and making passive provision for helping the design and construction phase. How can building information modeling, modern methods of construction all be integrated into that CapEx phase? And then moving into the operation and maintenance phase, where we need to consider already how this building would be operated, how the digital twin could help operate this building, who would manage the digital twin, and how the physical twin would relate with that. And then to do that, we actually connected with we actually thought up a lot of personas, which David will come on to, of the target audiences through the life cycle.
Oops.
Nearly.
So at the bottom, as Pete said, we've got some user personas that we identified as part of the project. So to give you some examples, the ability to analyse use of the building complex and activity space is really important for the asset owner. And that aligns with the goal of the strategic decision-making process. What really resonated with me throughout the whole project was the fact that there was a shared view that the success of the IMIC means that the building layer and the twin will absolutely evolve over time. So this isn't reaching a defined point at which, fantastic, we've constructed a building, we've got a digital twin of our building. We absolutely recognise that maritime innovation will change, so ways of working will change, the needs for the different activity spaces will change over time as well. Also, the ability to interact with a visually compelling representation of their investment is important for investors, and this was about making sure that they had that environment at which they could look at their investment, they could look at the risks over time as well, and effectively track their investment as we're breathing life into the IMIC itself. The ability to visualise and plan adaptation of activity spaces to meet specific needs and embed equipment layouts. So not only do we have the digital twin for the IMIC, but we're very conscious about the different use cases in terms of the building tenants, the products, and we heard earlier about design twins for assets. So this is about not just the IMIC as itself, but the interoperability between what our building tenants would bring as products into that overarching ecosystem. And then just highlighting one more was around the ability to visualize the physical layout of the building and develop operational workflows. So we were focused around the operational staff and the service staff in terms of their requirements for the twin. Okay, so on this slide, at the top of the diagram, this shows the kind of key steps that we went through from developing the maturity of the twin and key steps in terms of what will drive the activities on the roadmap. And this is about identifying all of the enabling activities that was really important in terms of narrowing down what activities would support which part of the maturity of the twin, which particular step we were looking at in terms of building that increasing capability from a twin perspective. And Pete's just going to talk a bit more about some of the activities that we carried out.
Yeah, so the roadmap that we created ended up, we created a number of work streams around organization, people and culture, governance, process and standards, technology systems and tools, information and data management, and supply chain and industry connections. And went about collating all that, the source data from that slide that showed all the source material that we went through with that digital lens to extract activities that we believe that the IMEC and Forley need to consider to go forward. So we had a number of activities that we actually did in this project to create the prototype itself. So we included them in this roadmap, and then for this first stage, really focused on the activities that need to be considered in the design phase, including even integrating elements from the REBA stages, for example, and what things need to be thought about, made passive provision for, and considered start to be invested in to get through the asset life cycle with that end in mind. And I stress that this is the first project that I've worked on where the digital twin operating at the end of the project was really the plan rather than an afterthought. So yeah, we've ended up with this immediate phase of the roadmap, which can and expected to be iterated as we develop further activities going forwards. What's our next slide? Cool. And also connecting the goals and the functionalities that we agreed the twin would deliver into higher level outcomes. So we developed a digital twin vision. So what the digital twin will do and what it'll really focus on. And that vision directly connects to the main clients, the main stakeholders' vision statements, which are not digital twin focused. They're simply the visions of Forley Waterside, Catapult, Innovate UK, and what they want to achieve. So that sort of line of sight from individual activities can connect directly up through to organizations' visions themselves.
And just in the centre, it's absolutely people that drive and benefit from digital transformation. So from the outset, we wanted to make sure that the user requirements were driving the agile development of the twin. And again, accepting that requirements will change, the user requirements, people-led, was also supported by another key set of people enablers, such as the target operating model, the role profiles for the twin, who will define and approve the different user stories associated with the twin. And again, there's been a common theme today around common language. So how can we achieve a common language and taxonomy in relation to asset system components or the enterprise data model, and also the overlaps and gaps between asset management and facilities management, as an example.
Stay there. So yeah, and then those interested in the actual output that we produced regarding the roadmap, we actually had a very large data file with metadata attached to every activity and connected to capabilities, and therefore it was fit for purpose for mounting straight into Power BI. The Power BI, as many will know, is not the most visually appealing of platforms when it comes to some of these activities, but we were able to show every single activity and through, able to drill down into each activity and see the detail associated with each. So what activity is targeting which benefits, the dependencies, and so almost an interactive Gantt chart with metadata associated with each activity. That raw data file we've shared as part of the delivery and can be taken forward, can be modified and changed going forward. So rather than a visually pleasing static output that is stuck, it's something that can be taken forward and evolved and iterated going forwards. It also is highly editable and filterable. So filters such as the activity owners are a filter, or with the work stream areas are all filterable. So you can immediately turn this into a work schedule and start gaining funding, resources, and get on with the activities, really. So to talk a little bit about the prototype twin, we went about putting together an architectural concept model. Procured some surveys swiftly, and then quickly had some workshops around what's the look and feel they would like from an innovation center, draw a lot of inspiration from other innovation centers and Catapult's previous work and collaborations they've done. Then the next step, building in the data and the intelligence into the model, deliberately taking from past example projects where we've already built in data. This wasn't the project for reinventing or creating anything new. This is for reusing, recycling examples of where we've done these things before. For example, plant rooms or HVAC or asset attributes. They've all been lifted from other projects, and that was the plan because this whole project was done in 10 weeks. So we're looking to show the art of the possible. This isn't a functioning building. This is a building the concept of a building for an investor or a tenant to consider. I can see what you're getting at here. I can see I'd like to invest in that. I can see this being an interesting space that I can see people working in, innovating in, and doing what the purpose of the building is intended. We also brought in the VR, the AR element into it as well as an interactive experience for the project. And then finally, we built all this into a showcase video, which is looking to deliberately showcase either with the functionality built in or showing as a demonstration of that functionality what the building could do through the life cycle, whether that's through the different phases, whether that's design phase or into the operation and maintenance. And for those interested in the software that we utilized a whole suite of packages to combine this together through 10 weeks, whether it's using Revit to start off, Revisto, we had Drone Deploy, The Wilds, Enscape, Tandem, so just to name a few, and quickly leveraging a team, an international team in Jacobs to pull together a product that we are pleased with and shows a vast array of functionality of what a building could do thanks to digital practices. Cool, to summarize. We'll put the video on later.
So this is a quick summary of what we just rattled through for you. It has been really agile, I think it's probably fair to say, as both David and Peter have talked about bringing different components and other experiences in. It's been incredibly collaborative. It's probably one of the most enjoyable projects I've worked on in a really, really long time. It felt really seamless between the different teams. And everybody just clicked with the objective of the mission. And also, I think we kind of get used to in the Catapult that we don't know the answers. So part of the reasoning we have bringing experts like the guys from Jacobs in is because that's what they are. So we're bowing to their expertise and their knowledge. So I think there was a few meetings. I think there were times when people were waiting for an instruction. We were like, well, what do you think? So yeah, probably hated us for it. The 3D virtualization piece, you cannot underestimate the power of that. We had a lot of this was done through Teams as well, and you would see some of the stuff being presented, especially where it came with the prototyping and the examples. There were grown men who were like children getting really excited because somebody was wearing a VR set somewhere and they were leaping into this fictitious building that may or may not stand up. We haven't done the detail bit on that yet. But it just brings it to life and it actually showed the power of it. But equally, that wouldn't have been able to happen without the work that David and Peter did. The roadmap is the critical element. The sort of the visualization gives you the wow factor, but it's the bells and whistles on the methodology that sits, and I think is the real differentiator here. That infrastructure asset management, again, it was all based on one single version of the truth data, and then the different softwares were then applied to take that data and use them for their own purpose. So you probably didn't appreciate it. One of the overlays there was some drone still imagery, because we flew a drone over the site, mixed with a 2D rivet model, then overlaid with a 3D image. And it just showed the power of bringing all those component parts of that software together. One of the critical elements was to fail fast. So when we've been thinking about the story to tell investors and stakeholders, it's very much a case of this won't make you money necessarily in its own right as you're going through that journey of building this full asset. But what it will do is it will massively de-risk it. It will help sustainability of the long-term journey of that asset. So, you know, it's not redundant and nobody wants to rent space in it in 10 years' time because you hadn't considered that. That's been brought in at the front end. But also, it allows you to fail fast. You know, we had examples where you could simulate some actual construction sort of, you know, there's an air duct competing with steels. Doing that in the twin, you can eliminate those problems, which will then save you time and cost actually in construction phase. So you can get operating much easier. And again, he's not here with us today, Marin, who I think he does this as a hobby as well as a day job. But there's one of the very early images I had in my head is of him with this mind map of 7 different softwares. And he had all lines drawing from each of them about how they all connected together and how you use the wild as the front door. And then you brought all these things in and it gave you, you know, that role from what does an asset manager want to see? What does a tenant want to see? What does a visitor want to see? And you can then navigate the way through those. And actually, with the user personas, the very last meeting we had of the project, we suddenly realized there were 2 that we hadn't looked at. And one was the planning department of your local authority, because REBA still says you have to do everything in paper or 2 dimensions, whereas we're now doing this. So there's a journey there. But also somebody who's going to manage and oversee and monitor the digital twin when it's operational. So those were the sort of the key takeaways that we had in doing this.
An output that came from this project that we didn't expect was also a potential challenge on the lifecycle process and a potential challenge to the REBA process. And that was this idea that while we were doing the prototype, we were initially setting our purpose and requirements for this building, for this asset and this area, delivering a prototype for that. And then the plan, the intention will be to have to reassess those requirements and the purpose of the building as potential investors come on board and maybe alter that set of requirements. Therefore, leading us to this idea that an iterative life cycle process could work. And that process in each of these stages targets these functionalities or these personas through the life cycle. It's a work in progress. I certainly don't want to get in trouble with REBA, but it's just something that fell out of the project that we found quite interesting. That's us.
Yep. So any questions? There is also a 10-minute video. We appreciate we don't have time, but we're really lucky that we fall into a break. So if you want, we'll happily just press play. But what you see here, everything you see here was created in 10 weeks, which is absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, we'll happily play it, or we can play it during the break if people want to actually have a look at what was created. We've got weather simulations and everything using real-time data and all sorts going in here. But back to what you were talking about earlier, about that stuff you just take for granted. Any questions?
Yes, hello, David Cameron, University of Oslo. your last slide where you showed the stages in the iterative development, very interesting that you're saying you're diverging from a REBA model, but what I saw was basically I could take it straight across into building oil platforms model. It's a very, very, perhaps an opportunity for convergence there, actually, around the functional modelling and then the realisation and the construction manager roles. So it was just more a comment than a question.
Yeah, no, it was, again, one of our last meetings, wasn't it? And we were like, actually, because it's more agile than waterfall, and it allowed, one of the things I think we took away as well is you always go back to your vision. If you get the vision right of what you're trying to do, every decision you make, you go back, does it align to the vision, or is it taking us down a blind alley? But also you can go, actually, you know what? No, this is right. We need to revisit the vision. But it allows you to maintain that constant, which is the original intention that you set. Yeah, of course.
Because I think one of the challenges we're seeing also in the oil and gas is that all the information in the end is poured down into the construction model. Mm-hmm. And so one of the biggest challenges we have is actually capturing a rationale and capturing the requirements still up at the top and trying to save those.
Yeah.
Because once you're in an operational digital twin, you're actually going to be wanting to make optimization decisions based on those things. Mm-hmm. But if they're all down in the BIM model, you're not going to be able to find them.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's that knowing at the beginning that this thing is going to be a twin. So what building blocks do you need to design into your building? And what are the acceptances and how do you build those parameters in? For example, I think the very first kickoff meeting we had, our strategic facilities director was like, we need to make sure that the FM strategy and the built environment strategy is considered right in part of this vision piece and those goals, rather than leaving it until the building's nearly finished and ready for handover. Yeah.
Any more questions in the room? No? So there is one online actually. So did you use real user research to develop your personas?
Research. Yeah, there's half an answer to that. So, so yes, we did. Because we brought, as Pete mentioned earlier, we brought a lot of data from other case studies and work that we've been involved with, but equally we do a lot of user persona work as well. So that half informed our user personas, but they were a starting point. It then led to more discussions around, actually, rather than starting from a blank piece of paper, let's talk about asset owners, let's talk about investors that were very specific for us on this particular project. So we were able to use the similar approach that we did from an asset owner and roll that out to investors, and then it spiraled from there. So the answer is, yeah, we started with user personas that worked for other organisations, but they were there to be challenged. This isn't user persona, this isn't the functionality, it's here are some examples. Let's challenge ourselves, let's kicking it around and settle on the ones that we did at the bottom. And in particular, these items here around the functionality requirements, that was born out of linking into the vision and what we were trying to achieve with the IMIC.
Yeah, the twin is looking to do lots of different things, and it's trying to group those things together into separate buckets and separate functionalities, rather than we want it to do everything. Well, that's great, but which part of the life cycle will that thing that you want to need to be turned on, and then when do we need to make passive provision for that thing you want to turn on?
Yeah. I think also there's 218 activities that you identified that are sitting in the BIM model. They can be filtered as well. So we've got those activities now, and it talks about which stages they happen in. This was a proof of concept, pretty much. The next challenge is to then make it real. And so we now know what activities we need to do and which of those stakeholders we need to start actively engaging now to test and validate, get that feedback. And the thing is, with that point that, yes, this is Forley, but say we can go and take it, that same methodology, and apply it to your world in the oil and gas. Or we can do another innovation ecosystem abroad or elsewhere in the UK. We've got a starting block. We've still got an understanding of who those stakeholders are, but those stakeholder requirements are going to change, because it's all about, it's almost decentralized personalization kind of thing. So you've got the building blocks, but what happens, a bit like your iPhone. You've got an iPhone, your apps personalize it to you, and that's what will happen with these.
Any last questions or comments? Nope. So thank you very much, Emma and the team. Thank you very much.